Good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday afternoon. It's grey and drizzly. I'm so glad we're in England in August. It's fantastic. It's just, I'm like, no, this is autumn weather. I don't mind autumn when it's autumn, but never mind. Never mind. I'm going to start. The one that I started with today is that I had a call from a previous client who's had no problems at all recently. Past 4 years, absolutely fine. And then he's had an employee this morning ring him up and tell him on the phone how he's a useless boss and he's giving this guy mental health issues, but doing it not even in a normal way, sort of like, actually, this is really awful and I don't like working with you, but apparently giving him a bit of a mouthful, but not actually resigning. So this guy is under a year's service. And it's sort of saying it seems to have been saying it to say along the lines of, you should change, boss. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Hasn't said he's resigning, hasn't officially raised a grievance. And that then prompted this client to ring up and say, help. So there's various different things we're going to try. But the main thing is that we start the conversation like, well, we can do a grievance hearing and we can listen to this and we can do a disciplinary. And he's like, yeah, that's all really good. And then he's like, yeah, I just need him gone by the end of the week after next. I don't want him in the business anymore. That's a whole different conversation. And we can do that. That's not a problem. But then let's not waste any time doing grievances and disciplinaries if we don't need to. We need to know what was actually said, which we're gating for. But what he also said, which was quite important, is that he's had problems with this guy, performance problems, attitude problems for the past year. But because he didn't have any HR in place, he didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And he was just trying to do the best thing, which is absolutely right. We should be trying to do the right thing by our employees. But actually, if you've got somebody who won't follow instructions because they know it better, is always when you ask them to do something like, okay, that type of thing, you need to be in the probation period getting rid of them, not waiting until there's a big event, because of course the fact the guys are out of his probation period now, he's now on 3 months notice, which is painful. It's not impossible to pay, but it's just painful because it sounds like he wasn't good in the first 6 months. And if the government does change the protection from unfair dismissal, you will have to get rid of them in the first 6 months. You have to pay attention. You have to have regular review meetings. If they're not performing, you don't say, oh, well, they're just getting into it. You're documenting it. I'm not saying you should be nasty, but you're documenting it. You're clarifying exactly what the action points are. They've got a deadline to do it by the end of next week. If they're not meeting those deadlines, then you need to part company with them sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you've got 3 months notice to pay rather than 1 week. Just saying. So there you go. Who would like to go next from my team? Catherine.
I just wanted to say that with investigation meetings, it is so good that you can just go to someone and say, can we have a chat? And then go and have that meeting. And 99% of the time, we advise that's what you do, because if you give someone notice of something like this, it can backfire. And we've had 2 cases this week where it has backfired. So the first is that the employee was on paternity leave. And we said to our client, don't write and invite him because you're just going to get a sick note. So we were going to do the whole, when you're back at work, we'll just sneak up on you. We'll just pull you in. He wasn't meant to know about it, but unfortunately they have got what we're calling a mole in the office who has contacted him, giving the heads up, and now they've got the 2-week sick note with stress and a complaint and probably a grievance incoming as well. The second scenario was that the supervisor was at work and the GM basically had a chat with her and said what the issue was, said, someone's left and they said it's because you were nasty to them. So we'll have a chat about it later. He should have just done it there and then. She's gone back to her desk, got angry, slagged him off, stood up and walked out. So she's probably spent last night, 1, devising all these brilliant responses to what's going to be raised, and 2, probably going to raise a grievance, or we're going to get a sick note. So sometimes it really is better. Now, it feels maybe a bit harsh. You don't want to just pounce on someone or not give them notice, but sometimes it is best you just say, can we go for a chat? Go into the meeting room, press record, and you get their you get their initial response, then you don't get the I've been preparing what to say and try not to get sacked response. So yeah, only rarely would we say to give someone notice for an investigation meeting.
Yeah, it's a bit like when somebody says to you, or even your boss, your boyfriend, says, "Oh, we need to have a talk," and you're like, "Okay," and they're like, "Yeah, but not today. We'll do it tomorrow." And you're like, "Oh my God, no!" It's like, now you need to tell me. "Oh yeah, but I don't really want to bother you with it today." No, you bother me with it today. You've got to do it at that point, and you don't put it off, because it's never going to work out well. Either they're going to be worrying about this overnight, if they're like, "Oh my God," or like Catherine says, they're going to be working out ways to make your life hell. So either way, it's not good. So let's not do that. Amy, I think.
Yes, I'm going to talk to you about GP notes. So I had a client yesterday who contacted us to say that they have received 5 separate GP notes from their employee, but they're all signed off by different doctors. Now, it's from the same surgery, but it's a different GP every time. And is that something I should be suspicious of? So the short answer is no. The GPs are so overwhelmed. I know my personal GP practice is so overwhelmed. I actually don't have a designated GP assigned to me, and it's unlikely for me to ever see the same GP twice. So we would not consider that remotely suspicious, but I do applaud them for looking at the GP notes in great detail. And if there is ever a time that you get a GP note that you are a little bit suspicious of, just send it through. We can have a look at it, and we can talk you through whether it's something to be worried about or something not to be worried about. And just as a reminder, as always, GP notes are required after 7 calendar days of absence, so make sure your employees are sending those in.
That actually goes nicely with what I'm going to talk about, which is phased returns. So I've recently had a few questions about employees generally coming back from long-term sick, or one coming back from maternity, wanting phased returns. Now, when someone comes back from long-term sick, the doctor's note will often say they can come back on reduced duties or reduced hours or that kind of thing. Or sometimes just literally the doctor writes in their best doctor handwriting, phased return, halfway across the page. And the employer has to know what that means. So what is a phased return? If you haven't dealt with it before, a phased return is for someone to come back to work on reduced duties or reduced hours, or often both. And then they build it back up to their normal full job, as in all their tasks and duties and their normal hours. Why is this required? Well, often if someone has been off long-term sick, very often what they've been off with could potentially be a disability. So you have to make the adjustments for them anyway. But also they may be recovering from something that causes them to get tired easily, maybe like, I don't know, heart surgery or something like that. Or maybe something like stress and anxiety, where they might feel overwhelmed, just coming straight back into 5 days a week, full time. Or, they might be recovering from something like shoulder surgery or a hip surgery, and they can't stand or walk for too long, or they can't lift things, or they can't bend down. And then you have to make adjustments to their roles and the time that they come back. So how does it work? Usually a phased return, you're looking sort of 3 to 6 weeks that it will be in place for. Someone will come back on what is reduced hours or reduced duties, and then you agree a time frame and a plan for building this back up. And this should be done before they return, in a return to work meeting, where you discuss what they can do, what they can't do, how many hours they can do, what the doctor said, what sort of treatment they're taking. They might still be taking medication that impacts on their ability to use heavy machinery, so for greens, that kind of thing. And then you agree with them, okay, well, you'll start back 3 days a week, and then we'll go to 4 days, and then we'll go to 5 days, and we'll see how it goes. And you should do regular reviews during a phased return, weekly or bi-weekly, to see that it's going well, because sometimes in a phased return, you have to pause for a minute, maybe go back a step if they're struggling. And what about payment for phased returns? So for a phased return, you have a few options. You could just pay them as normal if you want for their full hours, and they're only working some. If you are very generous, there is no need for you to do this. Or what we usually suggest is that you pay them for the hours worked and you top it up with sick pay, SSP or company sick pay if they qualify for company sick pay. You top the rest up with that. So they'll still be paid for full hours. Some of it might be SSP, so they might get less, but you're only paying them their wages for what they're working. The other option, for example, this applies more to returning from maternity leave. Employees can use holiday. If they've got a lot of holiday, you can actually allow employees to use holiday. So maybe a mum wants to come back 3 days a week for the first month, and then 4 days a week, and then 5 days, and then back to full time after 3 months. That's a fairly normal one that we see. They may have enough holiday days to cover the rest of their days. So again, you would only be paying wages for hours worked. So, and then do you have to do phased returns? No, but yes. By the rule book somewhere? No. Is it a risk not to? Yes, because someone might have a disability. It might be considered discrimination. You have a mum returning to work. There's a lot of reasons why it's not practically that easy to say no usually, and also just it's actually a benefit to the business, because if you have someone and you're just trying to push them straight back into someone coming off long-term sick, and you're trying to push them straight back into work 5 days a week, you're unwilling to consider a phased return. By the way, a doctor doesn't have to say you to. You can just do phased returns anyway. But if you just push them straight back into full duties 5 days a week, it's a good chance they're going to go right back off sick after a week or two. So it is actually better for you to allow them that phased return, so that, they don't just go back off sick. Okay. Questions about phased returns?
Or anything. Right. Any questions?
Anything at all?
Blissfully happy? Good. Well, there you go. That's going to be quite quick. We're going to do this autumn, we're going to do more, not every week, but we're going to do more sort of training ones. So we're going to do, I think it's the first week in September, we're going to do a longer session on dealing with sickness absence. The email will come out to promote that. We're also going to do something about appraisals, how to approach appraisals, how to tell people they're not performing and be able to do that, because I know it's scary to do that. There are different ways of approaching these things. And obviously any of the changes when the government comes back from its summer recess and they start actually announcing when things are going to change, we'll be going through the details of those. There are things that are going to change that we know that have already changed with the application. There's the tips policy that's coming in. Actually, we'll probably do one at the beginning of September on tips, because you need to have a tips. Well, one, you need to deal with tips the correct way, and you need to have a tips policy. As a client of ours, you'll get an updated tips policy for you to give out to your staff. But we also need to talk through how you're doing it now to make sure that you can adjust it, because otherwise people can start suing you. So let's try and avoid that. And the other one that's been approved but hasn't actually, which is interesting, it's sort of somewhere between a rock and a hard place at the moment. It's actually approved is that paternity leave, bereavement leave, paternity has been approved. It's ready to be sort of implemented, but has no date for implementation. So this one, which came up this week because it suddenly appeared, it's like, where has this been missing from all the hundreds of emails we see every week? That if the baby and or the mother dies, and therefore there is no actual birth, there is still the right to take paternity leave. Okay, and that's what will come into effect at some point, but we don't have a date for that. But it has passed all the official levels, that all it needs now is a date that it's maybe coming into effect from April next year, beginning of April, because that's when they do a lot of the employment law changes, is every April, and they will do October as an exception, but they try and do it once a year so that we all have a chance to keep up, really, rather than doing one every month. But that's one that's going to come in at all. Melanie?
When you run those training sessions, is it okay if we invite one or two of our heads of department?
Yeah, no, please, the more the merrier. That would be really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're going to record them as well, and I'll put them on the YouTube channel, and then I'll send out the link to the YouTube channel so you can get people to watch them as well otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
The other thing that's coming in October is the changes to your responsibility regarding sexual harassment. So you guys need, you're running out of time now to get the training set up for your staff, because you will be on the hook for it in the future. If you as a company have done nothing to prevent sexual harassment, then you will automatically get the 25% bump in a tribunal. Yeah. If you have done something but not much, if you've taken some reasonable steps, then it will just be compensation awarded. And obviously, if you've taken all the reasonable steps, you've got policies, you've got training records, you've got, the lot, then you hopefully don't have to pay anything out except your legal fees. Make sure you are on top of that. It's coming up quick.
Yeah. So, and it should be part of the onboarding process that all new staff do that training. And this is why you've got to have that flexible training. We can send you the link to our online training provider so that they have to do it. I do remember actually when my daughter went to Warwick University, all of the students, because they'd had so many problems with harassment at student level, they all had to every single year pass an online training about what consent is and what isn't consent and what you can do. And it was just interesting because my son's gone to Bath, they don't have anything. It's like surely this should be standard for all teenagers, because you get drunk, people make mistakes. I'm not trying to defend anybody, but it's like if we've all been trained, we've got a chance of getting out of it without our reputations in shreds. I'm going to say there isn't third-party harassment isn't covered. So for private sector companies, you don't particularly need to worry about being sued for a customer's actions. And obviously, I think you would take that seriously anyway, and you report them and you ban them and da-da-da. And for Mel's here with proprietary golf clubs, I don't think you're going to have a problem there with your members because they don't actually own the golf club. But it is a big issue for our member golf clubs, the private member ones, because effectively it could well be argued that the members are part of the organisation because it belongs to them. Therefore, anything that they do could be sued for. And you can't say, oh, well, they're just members. For example, just quickly before we go, we've got new sexual harassment one, yay, where a member who had been making inappropriate comments to the bar staff over the course of the evening, female bar staff got in a taxi to go home. The member jumped in at the same time. And there's so many things where you want to shriek at people about this. And the taxi driver kept going, didn't say, oi, mate, what are you doing? And she didn't say, oh, mate, what you're doing. I'm not saying it's their responsibility, but also that the member thought this was acceptable. Somehow he felt she'd been giving him signals, and then proceeded to sort of try and rope her and touch her and everything like that. And it's just, and it's the club is going through the process of dealing with this. But it was just one email I saw today that we're responding to, is that they've spoken to the employee and got the details now, because she didn't want to cause a fuss. It's like, surely you just want to be able to taser him in the ghoulies. I mean, really, that's what you want to be doing. But the club is like, oh, well, I haven't let him know what's been going on this week, so he'll be a bit concerned. He got into a taxi that he was not invited to and groped a female that has nothing to do with him, who did not want to be. I don't care what he's feeling. He should be in absolute purgatory. I bet he's not. I bet he's like, oh, well, she said she wanted it. It's like, we don't worry about the members. Sorry, I feel I'm coming across slightly cold and heartless, but he did the thing wrong. There is no doubt he did the thing wrong. He's just going to come back and say, oh, well, I was a bit drunk. I didn't really know what I was doing. It's like, that is not a defense. That was deliberate actions. But the club is like, oh, yeah, we don't want him to suffer too much. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do, actually, Pete. And until they take the accountability, until the clubs make their members accountable, we're going to keep having these issues, because they're just like, well, I thought she liked me. Why? Because she smiled at you when she served you a drink. That's her job. It's just hospitality and sexual harassment. It's just really weird. I have put into the chat, if you cut and paste it out, that if you haven't seen it already, absolutely fantastic. BBC, it's Key Stage 4, PSHA, about sexual harassment. And it's they've got two groups of people, and they show a role play, and then they stop at different stages to say, do you think this is sexual harassment? Do you think this is? And at the end, it goes through and you go, oh, I'm going to say, when me and Catherine were watching it, we were screaming at the screen from the first 2 minutes. And I think a lot of people on here, because you're the ones who are actually, educated, will probably also be doing that. But it was just so funny, interesting watching it go through and seeing what people are saying. And then you're like, no, you're wrong. But it's obviously very predominant what people think and what society has said was acceptable and da-da-da. And then you go through. And one of the things, what we find is always useful is always to say, would you have done this to a man? I appreciate men can be sexually harassed as well. I appreciate that. But the vast majority are male to female. It's like, would you have said that to a man? Would you have touched a man in that place? Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I'm not gay. And thank you for confirming that this was sexual then. That's it. So if you're going to do it to both genders, there might be other issues. But if you're only going to do it to females, then that's definitely sexual harassment. So thank you for playing. So there you go. On that lovely positive note, have a great bank holiday weekend. And we'll see you all here next week. Oh, no. Quickly. Catherine is going on maternity. She's going to be away until next October. Yay. Or boo. One or the other.
I won't see you next week. I might join the call next week.
No, you won't.
Oh, we will kick you off.
Yes, we will kick you off. Go and
I might need a break.
You might need a break.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so the baby's due sort of beginning mid-September. So that's going to be good. We're all waiting to see pictures and hear about, the experience. Yes. Or maybe not. Actually, it's fine. It was giving birth. It was lovely. It's over now. Let's not do that again. So wishing Catherine all the best, and I'm sure she'll keep in touch with some of the horror stories. And she'll be, I'm very glad I'm not dealing with that. And then we'll see her back next year, and we'll see everybody else back next week. Right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want a free tribunal audit of your employment contract and handbook, click the link in the description below.